A little historical tutorial for Rahul Gandhi, or a small tutorial in history for Rahul Gandhi. Welcome, Vanakkam, Jai Hind. I don't know if Rahul Gandhi needs any tutorial from me. Maybe I need tutorials from him, which is a prospect that I would welcome because I'm an avid learner. And age difference doesn't matter when it comes to learning. I'm happy to learn from my grandchildren, leave alone from Rahul Gandhi or from Sri Narendra Modi or Amit Shah, or even more excitingly from Subramanian Swami. By the way, I have to say that whether or not I agree with the moral or ethical aspects of his activities, I hold Subramanian Swami in some respect because perhaps he is the most encyclopedic politician in India at the present time, including Shashi Tharoor, for whom also I have respect and appreciation. But I think in terms of strategies, in terms of political maneuvers, in terms of sense of ground realities or ground sense of realities, I would rate Subramanian Swami higher. Certainly, I would rate Swami higher than Shashi Tharoor in terms of the political track record and his varied experiences. Irrespective of the question as to what those experiences add up to, the fact is that his track record in politics is enviable. And in comparison, Shashi is a comparatively latecomer. He is also a lateral entry. I am not against lateral entries, because if a person has gained enormous expertise, knowledge, wisdom through his active and meaningful engagement in other spheres of life and can bring the fruits of his lifelong learning to bear on the political process of India, so much the better. So I am not belittling that, but the fact is that I happen to rate Subramanian Swami higher than Shashi Tharoor in terms of his political acumen. Whether or not he always uses his political acumen to the right end is a problematic issue, but let that be. Now, let me make three references to history, just three references, and all of us can remember it very easily. As you know, I speak without any notes, and I do so not because my memory is good, not because I know anything, but because if I have a single piece of paper in hand and I have to divert my attention from you to the piece of paper that I have to refer every now and then my connectedness to you gets disrupted. And I am not exaggerating when I say that when I speak, actually I derive a lot of energy from you, and that works within me in the crucible of my mind, to use a metaphor from T.S. Eliot, in activating in a catalytic fashion this intellectual chemical process that results in the generation of newer ideas, newer strains of thought, etc. Therefore, you are an active participant and a real presence in this process, and therefore I cannot afford to have my connectivity to you disrupted even for a microsecond. Therefore, I am willing to lose out on a lot of other things if I were to prepare a well structured lecture and then share it with you. Maybe the end product would be much superior, but that gain would be also a loss in terms of my spontaneity and my happy connectedness to each one of you. Now, let me refer to three instances. First is to the deposition of Louis the 16th of France. Louis the 14th is very famous. I'm referring to Louis the 16th, who is referred to as Little Napoleon, I think. No, Little Louis, I'm sorry. It's referred to as Little Louis, by even a great author like Victor Hugo, who has written a book on Louis the 16th. A very interesting read, and I commend that book to you. I find every book by Victor Hugo deeply fascinating, including his autobiography, his memoirs of that very exciting period in history, the French Revolution. Now, when Louis the 16th was dethroned, a great deal of expectation, national euphoria, excitement came into being. People thought, this was the ultimate thing in history. And from then onwards, France could look forward to a period of unending political gains, even personal bliss and cultural effervescence. And this is not some subjective emotions or expectations harbored by the French. The positive vibrations of the French Revolution spread all around and engulfed the whole of the continent and reached also England. So much so a poet like Wordsworth, in his long poem, The Excursion, could say about the French Revolution, "Blessed was in those days to have been alive, but to be young was very heaven." So that was a kind of excitement that the French Revolution created in the minds of Europeans in general, including the English. What happened after the dethronement and assassination of Louis the 16th? He was followed by Napoleon Bonaparte. And how many Frenchmen lost their lives? The reign of Napoleon Bonaparte, of course, is hailed by historians as the watershed, the golden age in French history. And Napoleon is himself certainly one of the most fascinating political, military leaders history has ever seen. I'm personally immensely fascinated by him. And I've plodded through the long biography of Napoleon by Bourrier, as well as read several historical accounts of Napoleon's life, particularly the time from the Battle of Waterloo to his tragic end at St. Helena, the lonely, miserable death at a comparatively young age of this most unique man for whom millions and millions of Frenchmen were willing to lay down their life and deem it a privilege to do so. He appealed to the French sense of honor, as Victor Hugo points out in Les Miserables. He capitalized on the French sense of humor, having awakened it and made brilliant use of it. But not only France, the whole of Europe had to pay a very heavy price for the succession of Louis the 16th by Napoleon Bonaparte. So the great and glorious expectations awakened by the French Revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity, three words that still continue to reverberate in the horizon, in the corridor of human political aspirations. Nothing like that has ever happened thereafter. But in spite of that, French Revolution was followed by the Reign of Terror by Robespierre, then paved the way for the emergence of Napoleon Bonaparte, with the consequences that we all know. A period of great glory and great horror. and culminating in the tragic end of Napoleon himself. Now think of another historical episode. Charles I was executed. We are now moving into English history. Charles I was executed, and the tussle between the king and the parliament. Charles lost. So a great and glorious revolution came into being, as it were, or seemed to have come into being. But that process culminated in the ascendancy of Cromwell. What did Cromwell do? By the way, Cromwell is exalted as a great political personage by none other than Carlyle, Thomas Carlyle, in his book on heroes, hero worship, and the heroic element in history. Cromwell understood that Charles lost because he did not maintain a powerful army. So the first thing he created was a powerful army. The second thing he realized was that the power of the parliament, and particularly the power being located in the notables of England, was a big problem. Therefore, he went after each one of them. All these things are of contemporary significance to our political life. You can understand a lot of what's happening in our midst if you have a little bit of historical sense. So, the glorious expectations that the English entertained by dethroning Charles I and by paving the way for the ascendancy of Cromwell did not really fructify. And England did not witness the birth and the consolidation of a true commonwealth. Okay, now let's think of another instance. Now let's move into Russia. Nicholas II was a weak king, and the kind of magical control that Rasputin had on him is history. It is legend, not even it is legend. He was not a bad man really, but he was a weak man. And the forces of history were against him. So he was dethroned, and who succeeded him? Stalin, after a period. Lenin, then Stalin. Now, the political corruptions or misdemeanors of Nicholas II, the Tsar of Russia, are peanuts compared to the reign of terror that Stalin unleashed. It was a common saying in Russia of those days, Stalin's Russia, that if Stalin smiled at somebody, he was sure to lose his head the next day. And by a common computation, 25 million Russians lost their life in order to enable Stalin to reign over Russia as the ultimate force in history. The same pattern you find in German history. I don't have to now go on giving what happened to Hitler, Hitler's ascendancy, etc. and the rest of it. The pattern is the same. The pattern is the same. Now, why do I want Rahul Gandhi to pay attention to this pattern? Why do I want all of us to reckon this pattern? I want us to do so to recognize a very important point about human existence in history. After all, humanity as a whole belongs together. We are members of the same family. Human history, world history is one. It flows like a single river all through the plane of time. Now, in this, one particular important truth is very visible, and it repeats itself, though people don't pay attention to this. That's why we are told that those who do not understand history are doomed to repeating it. So here is an important insight into history that we must understand for fear of repeating it, because it's something that we cannot afford to go on repeating, and that is revolutions will come, revolutions will go, but the great euphoric expectations awakened by revolutions remain unfulfilled for the reason. Now, this is the part I want Rahul Gandhi to understand. For the reason that the people are not prepared to deserve anything better. The fact that you do everything possible and you are willing to suffer any pain, any loss, even loss of life, in bringing down an oppressive regime, a corrupt regime, a weak regime, a disappointing regime, doesn't mean that you are prepared and you are eligible for something better. So the one agenda that all political leaders, including great leaders like Napoleon Bonaparte, Cromwell has his own areas of greatness, even Stalin had, but all of them neglected one particular agenda. Maybe they did so on purpose, I don't know. I can't speak authoritatively on this, I don't have the requisite historical information. But I know nothing which makes me think that they did so on purpose and that is not a byproduct of their political ambition. However, this is a matter of debate. But what is that one significant historical lesson that all of us must make note and take note of? That is, revolutions or great changes in history, like in the present case, say Rahul's attempts to deliver the people of India from the oppressive air of the Modi regime, etc. I'm simply describing the situation. I'm not giving my views. I am deriving the substance from Rahul's speech, the psychology, the mentality, the political nuance, the suggestiveness, etc., and giving you a picture of what happened and what's happening. Now, that attempt, if it's to really succeed and consolidate itself and endure over time, the most important agenda is not the bringing down of or driving out of a particular configuration of power from national life or preeminence in national life, but to prepare the people for something better. I'm not saying that the second can be done without the first. The first has to happen. If a government is corrupt, if a government is oppressive and tyrannical, and if a government works against the larger interest of the people on whose behalf they govern, then it becomes incumbent to drive them out or bring them down. But that process is not complete in itself. That's what I'm arguing in historical hindsight. The real agenda is preparing the people of the nation, whether it is the French nation or the English nation or the Russian people. They have to be prepared. If they are not prepared for something better, then they themselves will bring back the old system. The corpse is always there, it can always be resuscitated, resurrected, and you have a greater tyranny, greater oppression than ever before. The reign of Nicholas II was nothing compared to the reign of Stalin. What the people of France lost on account of this great man's rule, Napoleon Bonaparte, the privations that they suffered, the loss of life that they suffered, and the final humiliation that they suffered, was nothing, was far in excess of what the people suffered under Louis XVI. So this is something that we have to really recognize in a very positive sense, namely, that the people of India, we the people of India, have to go forward. We have to become better. And why I say this as a lifelong teacher is this. I harbor this unbearable pain that I see the stuff or the stock of the Indian people being degraded. Look at our public life. Look at the public culture in display. Look at the way we speak. Look at the sentiments that we are in public. Look at the strategies that we adopt. Look at the meanness that's on display everywhere. The greatness of the spirit is nowhere in evidence. The human stock seems to be getting degraded day by day. And I tell you this for a fact, and I say this in accountability before the Almighty, that if a people do not deserve better, no matter what political maneuvers they undertake, the end product will be worse. So, it's not enough for Rahul Gandhi to project himself as an alternative to Narendra Modi. Rahul actually does not do so because he's a man, as far as I understand him, of no political ambition. He has to be coerced into accepting offices of importance, as we have seen repeatedly these 15 years, on which also he is ridiculed. That's another issue. Whatever he does, he'll be ridiculed. So there's no exception to that rule. But what he has to do alongside, not as an alternative, but alongside, he has to also educate the people of India. And I think he's aware of this because his decision not to be in attendance at the Ambani wedding is an important schooling for the people. An important lesson is imparted to them that there are, as I said in a previous video, there are things far more important, far more precious than money, and there are noble things that money cannot buy. And that therefore, when we formulate our vision of life, money should not be the central point or the guiding principle, and that we should set our hearts and minds on things nobler and higher. And here, let me make a reference to a great economist who was also a great moral thinker. I don't know how many teachers of economics who quote from his magnum opus, An Inquiry into the Wealth of Nations. I'm talking about Adam Smith, the Scottish economist of great distinction. I don't know how many of them are aware that the very same great economic genius has written a classic work on ethics. It's called An Inquiry into Man's Moral Sentiment. A Theory of Moral Sentiments. That's it. A Theory of Moral Sentiment. I'm sorry about the confusion that came into mind about. There are so many books beginning with an inquiry into an inquiry into an inquiry into. So it sort of had a spillover effect. So, A Theory of Moral Sentiment by Adam Smith. Now, in that text, it's a book that I recommend to all of you. And I will be deriving material from that book in some of the videos that I hope to do in the future. I don't know when I will get down to doing it, but I certainly will draw material from that very important landmark publication, A Theory of Moral Sentiment by Adam Smith. Now, one of the very significant insights that Adam Smith provides through that book is this. He says, when a society embraces money as their supreme value, then they will lose their regard for merit. Why? Because then they will measure everything and everyone in terms of profit and loss, in terms of the wealth that a person commands. Now, for example, what is the value, what is the worth, what is the respect that Mukesh Ambani commands today? Why is it that his brother Anil Ambani, born to the same parents, the same stock, is nowhere to be seen? One is infinitely richer than the other, and therefore he will be a demigod. Now, when you have that kind of an attitude, what happens is you'll become blind to human greatness, human worth. It doesn't matter whether a person is immoral or stupid or a third-rate person in his third-rate character in his personal life. As long as he is a billionaire, everything is wiped clean, and you will fold your hands before him. This is, according to Adam Smith, a confession of your own moral bankruptcy and the proof that you have succumbed abjectly, completely to the power of money. And Rahul Gandhi, by dissociating himself from this trend of kowtowing or prostrating oneself before the billionaires in our midst, is reclaiming a bit of the lost ethical territory in public life and standing on behalf of human dignity, which must stand towering above the puny stature of material wealth. End of the day, material wealth can take you only up to this. Even if Mukesh Ambani has another $200 billion more of wealth, it's not going to add a piece of straw to his sense of personal welfare or his spiritual security. Nothing is going to deliver him from his nervousness about his own old age, his utter insecurity about his eternity, and even about the value or lack of it that he would have in the eyes of his children and grandchildren. Let me conclude my thinking by quoting a few words from Walt Disney, the great American producer of cartoons, who is reputed to have made $1 billion out of just one cartoon character called Mickey Mouse. So that's a genius of the man. He was an absolute celebrity in his times, Walt Disney. So the journalist asked him, Mr. Disney, how do you live with your celebrity status? Remember the question, easy, no? How do you live with your celebrity status? You know what Walt Disney said? He was contemptuous. He sneered. He said, celebrity status? Did you say celebrity status? He said, my celebrity status does not make my wife obey me or my children love me. It does not even drive away the ticks from my pug dog. That's what he said. It does not drive away the ticks, the insects. No, it does not drive away the ticks from my pug dog. That's celebrity status. And I'm sure if Mukesh Ambani hears me, he will agree with me. It's nothing. All this is nothing. It's nothing but the tinsel town. It glitters for a while. It will catch fire, disappear into smoke. And when that happens, only a few worms crawling on the face of the earth will be left. There's nothing enduring in any of these things. At least in this country, which is illumined by the great seers of the past, who understood through the illusions of all of this and developed the doctrine of Maya. Doctrine of Maya. Doctrine of Maya. I am amazed that Hinduism, that produced this great perspective on the affairs of the world, can also create this culture of abject submissiveness to Maya itself. It's a great warning against Maya and a great submission to Maya. Now, I'm completely bamboozled. This is not the problem with Hinduism. It's a problem of the selective application of Hinduism, because Hinduism also has the goddess of wealth